everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Northwest Craftsman. So you guys may have seen on my Instagram or on my Facebook me using a laser to engrave on any of the coasters or cutting boards or any of the number of things that I have. And the laser has really become a quintessential part of my workshop and of the products that I make because it allows me to add customization to just about anything. Up until this point, I've only been using a little tiny 5-watt Genmitsu CNC, which 2 years ago when I purchased it, 5-watt lasers were basically all you could get on the market. But from the time that I got that in and I saw how useful it was, I knew that I needed to upgrade it. So I immediately got online and started doing some research, and one of the companies that came up that I've been following for basically that 2 years until now is xTool. They also only had a 5-watt laser at the beginning, but I watched them as they slowly brought in a 10-watt and then a 20-watt and then a 40-watt, and now they've got CO2 and IR and all sorts of stuff. And I was getting ready to purchase one because I was like, yeah, there's no way that they're going to partner with me on anything, but I was like, you know what? Might as well. So I reached out, sent them an email, and within an hour they got back to me and said, yeah, we like your content. We can give you a 50% off coupon on the D1 Pro 40 watt because that's the one that I was interested in. And I was just absolutely blown away. It's like, oh, okay, sounds good. So I got one of those. I got the extension kit. I got the honeycombs. I got a whole bunch of different things, and we're going to be going and assembling it today. So not just the base kit, but I'm going to be going straight all the way up to the 40 watt because that's what I wanted in the beginning anyways. So we're going to be doing the base, the extension kit, and the 40-watt upgrade all in one, and then we're going to be doing just a very quick setup for it. I'll be doing tuning videos and other stuff later so that you guys can see how to get optimal performance out of it, but right now we're just going to be doing the setup. And again, that means full disclosure, they did give me a 50% off coupon, but I literally had it in my cart before I sent the email to them anyways, and I initiated it because I'm interested in working with them, and I think they've got a really cool product. All right, let's get going. Alrighty, so if you were one of the ones that chose to skip past that intro and background to why I got this laser, I'm going to be starting with the assembly of this laser, and then I'm going to be moving into the setup. There's not going to be a lot of tuning around this. I will have separate videos coming out to show you how to get the best performance out of your laser. Also, as a note, because I am putting together the 40 watt with the base and the extension all in one, none of the instruction manuals for the individual components are sufficient to put it together. I had to bounce between all three of them. So in this video, I'm going to be simplifying it down for you so that you see what is the process you need to go from base to end without having to dig around in all the different instruction manuals. And with all of the initial unboxing done, here comes the fun part. So when you open up the base unit, you're going to be greeted by two green folders or two green envelopes. One of them should be a sample materials pack, which gives you a variety of the different materials that xTool has for their lasers. And then the other one contains a couple of different documents. First one is a nice little thank you card, which has a little note from them. Next is a small magazine, which contains some images of different projects that people have made, kind of to spark ideas or otherwise. I thought it was kind of cool. Next is a more technical manual, which holds a lot of the technical information for the tool itself and all of the different languages that they offer. Lastly, and the one that I cared about the most, was the assembly instructions, which contained a lot of really great images. After removing a black piece of protective foam, you see the underside, which contains more of the components for the base unit. In this green box, you will find a hard-sided case that has some protective glasses, and then you'll also find the toolkit, which has all of the different screws, collets, and parts that you need to assemble the frame. In the lower right-hand corner, you had the 10-watt laser module. And then along the left-hand side, we have all of the different frame pieces that we are going to need for assembly. And in fact, for ours, because we're shooting straight up to the extension kit, only 2 of them are needed, including this one that I'm holding in my hands. But for your familiarity, we're going to go through the rest of them because we will need some parts from all of them. This bar is what the laser mounts onto. It's the cross member. You've got a power cord, which goes from the wall to the transformer. You've got another piece which is going to have the motherboard on it. This sends on the leftmost side or the rightmost side, depending on how you have it set up. And this is the other major component that we're going to need. Those 2 that are down on the desk right now are going to be pieces that end up in the final frame. These last 2 pieces are usually the front and the back, or I guess it's the left and the right, depending on how you have your tool set up, but these are going to be replaced by the extension kit. Underneath one of those side rails is the transformer for the original, but you do not need it because the 40 watt has its own. They also provide the USB on the far left and a couple of connector cables in the middle and some grease on the right. I'm going to put in all the components that I don't directly need right now, but we will be touching base on these later because I will need to harvest a couple of parts. Alrighty then, pulling over the extension kit, this is going to give me the side rails that I need. The first thing that you're going to find on the inside of this box is a postcard looking thing which has a QR code which has a link to the directions to put this together. The difference between this and the other parts is that this one had the digital instructions as opposed to written instructions. I didn't really have any issues with the video, but I do like having written instructions that I can refer to. Otherwise, in the box came the 2 rails and this parts kit so that you can upgrade everything. Now, opening up the 40 watt laser module, you are going to find a couple of things. First is going to be another thank you note, followed by an instruction manual which has a very similar setup to the base kit. And then just like the base kit, underneath this foam is going to be the different components that we need. First up is going to be another parts kit, which has all the miscellaneous components, a new motherboard, the 40-watt laser module, and then the cross member, which is upgraded to support the much heavier 40-watt laser module. Underneath that cross member is the upgraded transformer that you need. Note that it does not come with the wall section, so you will need to pull that from the original package. They also provide you with the longer cables that you're going to need for the extension kit. Initially, it was pretty confusing for me, all the different components that I was going to need because each one came with its own parts, but these are all the different parts that you're going to need for this full assembly. First, I am going to be upgrading the rails that came with the extension kit, and that requires me to pull in the 2 original side rails. You'll need to snip the zip tie that is holding this glider in place, and then you're going to flip it around to the other side and undo the fasteners which are holding the tensioner in place. Once the tensioner and glider are free, you can gently pull the smaller belt out of this toothed groove to free the glider to be transferred over. Moving to the other rail now, I need to get the stepper motor off so that we can push it to the extension rail. You're going to do this by loosening these 4 bolts that are on the back, but as a note, this first one that I tried, it just stripped out. Second one was loose, and so it came out really easily, but I was only able to get 2 of the 4 out. So the way that I got the other 2 out is by taking the smallest Torx head that I had on hand and pounding it into the fastener so that I could just use the Torx head to pull it out. There was a mismatch in size between the Allen key and the head of the bolt, and so it just didn't work well. As a note though, xTool was really helpful in wanting to get me the parts, even though I didn't need them in the end. With the stepper motor off now, I can remove the tensioning assembly the exact same way that I did it on the first side, remove the glider from the track, remove the belt from the glider, and then on both sets of belts now we need to remove them from the tensioning assembly, which can be done by loosening the set screw on the bottom of the tensioning assembly, pushing out that center axle, and then removing the pulley. Once you have that, pull the longer belts out of the parts kit that came with the extension kit, wrap the smooth side around that pulley wheel again, reinstall the axle, and then tighten the set screw. Do this for the other side as well, and you're ready to go. Next, I'm going to install the gliders, but orientation does matter. There's 2 separate pieces for these extensions. One has a pass-through for the power and the USB, and that is going to get the glider that does not have the sensor assembly installed on it. The other one, which has the stepper motor, and on the bottom a couple of drilled holes for metallic flags, is going to get the glider which has the assembly on it that detects those metallic flags. So then if you're watching real closely, you're going to see me do that backwards in this first case. I will fix that in the end, but the rest of the assembly is the same. So on this end that has the long slot, that is where the tensioner is going to go. Make sure that your belt is mostly untangled as you're moving it to the other side. That will just help you a little bit in the future. When you hold your rail up on end, you're going to notice that it is asymmetric. You have a longer side and a shorter side. The longer side is going to have the 2 wheels touching the bottom, and the shorter side is going to have the 1 wheel on top, and you're also going to see that overhang on the left. You should just be able to push it basically right on. So that's what it looks like when you get mounted, but you need to put the belt in place first. Notice that the teeth are going to be facing in one direction only, and knowing that orientation, you want to make sure that you don't have tangles between your tensioning unit and that when you install it. It sounds more complicated than it really is, just make sure that you don't have a bunch of knots between the 2. On the other side, I put a light amount of tension on the tensioning unit and then tightened that stop screw down just so that it kept things a little bit neater for the rest of the assembly. You will go through a final tensioning, but this is just a start. Now, working on the side which has the stepper motor, you go through basically the exact same process. What is a little bit different is that you have to get the stepper motor installed, and so you want to create a little bit of space between your glider and where the pulley on your stepper motor integrates. And then for a quick close-up, you want to make sure that the teeth on this pulley integrate nicely with the teeth on the belt, and this is just going to loosely set right here, because now we need to come in from the backside and reinstall those screws and spacers. I found it easier to get 1 or 2 of them in place and then move it off the edge of my workbench so that I could push it up and through and actually have some space to tighten it. With those now in place, I did a quick test pull to make sure that everything was pulling nice and smoothly all the way through, noting that it is not at its final tension, but I was trying to look for any major snags. And one of the things that I found at this point was that I had the wrong gliders on the wrong side, so I needed to quickly go through and redo both of those. With the major mechanical portions in place, it is now time to install the metallized flags and the new sensor board that is going to go on the glider. You can find these in the parts kit that came with the 40-watt laser. Uninstalling the old board and installing the new board is as simple as removing the 2 fasteners that were in the old board and then using them to install the new fasteners in the new board. With a new board installed on the glider, we can now install the metallized stops. This larger one is going to go on the side with a stepper motor, and these slots that are in this stop are for each one of the different laser modules. Now, because the 40-watt module is much larger than the other modules, you need to put it on this furthest to the end setting. I also tried to figure out which fasteners we needed for this, and I honestly couldn't, so I went to the D1 Pro base kit, removed the flags from that, and then used those two fasteners in this module. Here you can see the orientation of that stop a little bit more easily, and I was just testing the glider to make sure that it passed through the stop without issue. The other stop on the other end of this rail installs just as easily, and I did use the fasteners from the base kit as well. Next, as a part of the 40-watt upgrade, we need to replace the motherboard. The motherboard can be removed by the 4 screws in these 4 different locations. They have a small compression block on the back that kind of sticks, so gently pull it up, and then you're going to notice this black cable that passes around, which goes to the Wi-Fi antenna. I found that I couldn't remove it with my finger, so taking a small screwdriver, I gently popped it up off the base and was able to fully remove the motherboard. Now with the new 40-watt motherboard, you're going to do this in the exact reverse, applying the Wi-Fi antenna cable and then putting the 4 fasteners back in, which I did so loosely, and you're going to see why it needs to be loosely here in a second when we're installing the rest of the frame, but just gently put this back together. Now putting the entire frame together, you will notice the motherboard has the power on USB in and power in switch, which is going to align with the side frame which has those same pass-throughs. The entire assembly dry fit together pretty easily outside of the corner that had those pass-throughs, and that's because the motherboard was too close to the top, which interfered with the thickness on the extrusion. I had to loosen the screws quite a bit more from where I had them so that I could actually fit it up and around. All of the other sides fit together really smoothly though, and that was just with a dry fit, no fasteners. Once everything has been dry fit together, you are going to notice in the original D1 Pro base kit these small countersunk screws, which are going to be used to fasten all 4 corners together. There should be 12 total, 3 on each corner, and there's nothing really special about it. Just go around tightening all of them down until the whole frame is steady and secure. Next, I took these fasteners with the blue dots and then I threw them through the end here until they integrated with the back side of the tensioning assembly. I did not tension anything yet. I basically just loosely installed everything so that it was ready to go for the next step. Here is a close-up on what it looks like on the inside. You can see that the fastener just passes through the frame and into that tensioning assembly. Next, I took this shaft or rod with a pulley on it, integrated it into the belt on the side with a motherboard. There is a small bearing inside of the frame that you will integrate it into, and then with the collar on, which came in the hardware kit, you're going to lever this around until it straddles the rod that is on the stepper motor and the transfer rod. This basically is going to sync both in place once you tighten those screws down, but before we do that, we need to align both sides. You'll notice that when you slide it all the way to the front, there is a small gap. I used my calipers to measure this small gap, but if you have some shims that you can get to match exactly what that gap is to make it the same on both sides, that works great. It's just that the motherboard got in the way on the one side. Once you have the gap the same, you're going to rotate this collar around until those fasteners are exposed, and then you're going to tighten them down, and that is going to sink this stepper motor into that shaft, which means that both sides will move at exactly the same time. Next, we get to start plugging things in. In the original D1 Pro base kit, you are going to find this short cable which is going to span from the motherboard to the stepper motor that is on the edge of the frame. Once that is plugged in, you're going to use some of the supplied zip ties to secure it to the frame using these 3 holes. Next, we're going to pull out the upgraded gantry for the 40-watt laser. Start by clipping those zip ties that are right down the middle, and then find the fasteners which have the red dot on them. These are going to be used to secure the gantry to those glides. Now, that little extended piece that comes off the glides is going to nest nicely as a mechanical step. It datums really beautifully, honestly, off of those. You don't even need to try and hold it in place. Once it's there, you're going to use those fasteners to tighten everything down. And then using the last long fastener in the hardware kit, you are going to provide some tension to that belt. Note, do not install this all the way or you can break the belt. It's only going to go part way in. Next, we need to swap out the wiring. The base wiring comes for the standard size unit and we need to make it compatible with the extension kit. Unplug everything from the stepper motor, pull it out of the housing, and then you're going to use the other bundle of wires that came with your 40-watt kit, plug everything back into the stepper motor and the control boards, and then reintegrate it into the housing that is on the back side of the extrusion for the gantry. Running that cable down to where the motherboard is, you will notice these 3 different colors of connectors and wires. You've got the red, the yellow, and the white. You are going to plug them in exactly as you would expect, although noting it is a little bit difficult to reach because it is inside of the extrusion. I did use some needle nose pliers to kind of reach around the corner and finish seating these connectors. Next, you're going to gently route this cable on the underneath side of this side of the extrusion, and then you're going to zip tie it to the frame. Note that you are only going to use the furthest one and the nearest two. The center one will remain unused. With a cable system like this, you want to make sure that it doesn't either bind up or move into the workspace, and so in this case, I moved the gantry all the way back and then moved it forward to see how the cable was moving while the gantry was moving. You really want to make sure that it stays on the edge of the frame, so however you need to adjust the cable ties or mounts, do it until you get the correct cable behavior. Then moving back to the original D1 base kit, there is this teeny tiny cable that you are going to use to connect the sensor on the glide to the gantry. With all of those cables plugged in, it is now time to add the laser. I'm going to be adding the 40 watt laser first because I expect this to be the workhorse of my operations. On the left-hand side of the dovetail, you will notice a small fastener which is used to bind the laser into the dovetail. Now it's possible that it's not properly adjusted at the start. Like here, I have it all the way in the locked position, but my laser still moves around. But fixing this is really easy. So you're going to want to pull out on this knob, rotate it around, and then once it integrates back in, it's kind of spring-loaded. You want to make sure that it's adjusted to a place where it goes almost all the way down to lock the laser in place. To plug in the cables, you're going to lift up on this strain relief and, well, plug them in. I rotated the strain relief back in place and then gave the gantry a move back and forth to make sure that everything slid smoothly and the cable had enough reach to reach both ends of the gantry. With everything almost complete, we want to apply the final tension to those drive belts. First, loosen up that bolt that's on the outside, and then use those bolts that were installed on the end to apply tension to the belts. You don't need to wrench down on it, but you do want to make sure that they're pretty taut. Again, I ran everything to make sure that it wasn't binding or skipping as it moved around. Should be nice, easy, and smooth. The last step for the motherboard is to install the SD card that came with the base kit. You're just going to find it inside that hardware kit, and you're going to plug it in right here. Now that empty space against the wall is where this is going to live eventually, but I didn't have the table built yet because I wanted to make sure that the unit was here, so I had to move my entire workbench over near enough to the computer so that the cables could reach. Something that I highly recommend if you're going to be getting one of these lasers are these hex cell cutting mats, and that allows you to get airflow underneath them so that when you're doing through cuts, you have a place for the exhaust and the debris to go as opposed to just binding up on the underneath side. xTool sells these really nice ones that come with this aluminum backing to protect whatever you're working on, and then I got 2 of them because I have the extension kit. And that's basically it for the assembly. Now, I want to go through and do a test run on this so that you guys can see what it actually does in person, because what fun is setting up a laser if you don't get to see it do something. So using that sample material kit that came with the laser, I'm going to pull out one of the pieces of 3mm basswood, set it down, and throw my logo onto it. Supply power, supply data, ready to turn it on, and there we go. No magic smoke, that's a good sign to start with. Again, in a future video, I will probably go through in more detail about how to set up the focus for this, but using the kickstand on the side, I set this distance to the surface, and then I started cutting. Now, one of the things that I noticed when I went through this first time, and you'll probably notice too, is my logo is backwards. That's not an issue with the filming, that is that it actually cut backwards or engraved backwards. So after figuring out that I had my origin set incorrectly in Lightburn, I tried it again, and it turned out exactly the way that I expected it to, and it is so cool to watch this thing just blaze through wood that I wasn't able to cut before. So there you have it, guys. There is setup in a quick test using this tool. I am really impressed by the build quality. The only issue that I had was those 2 fasteners on the servo motor, but otherwise the build quality is spectacular. This definitely moves it into more of a prosumer category, where I don't know if I would use this in an industrial context, but it is way better than any of the other hobbyist setups that I have seen on the market, where it feels a little bit like a home science experiment or a home engineering project. This one was productized, ready to go, and looks beautiful in the workshop. I'll have plenty more videos in the future about how to use this tool if you guys want them. Yeah, let me know in the comment section what you guys would like to see. If you want any specific videos put out on this, I love to hear from you guys, and you guys are how I get some of my best ideas. So thank you guys for watching all the way through this. I hope you guys are going to get one yourself, and any of the links that are in the description are affiliate links, so I do get a small percentage of those coming back to the channel, but it does help the channel keep going, so I appreciate you guys' support. And again, xTool did support me by giving a 50% discount on this particular unit. However, I was planning on purchasing it anyways. So again, thank you guys for joining me. I really appreciate it. Happy woodworking. Go make some sawdust, or smoke in this case, I guess, and have a good one. See you guys next time. Bye.